Marvel have one of the most influential film franchises, and they are able to reproduce film after film with the same storyline. But one thing Marvel have managed to do very well is the Avengers theme tune, and it's one of the most epic pieces of film music that there is. And it goes something like this. So I'm going to go through why I think it's such a great theme tune, but it doesn't actually start there. This theme has 3 parts, and the first part is in G minor and goes like this. And then there is a melody that goes like this. Now, the interesting thing straight away is that this is a G minor chord, but it doesn't have the middle note in it. And if you were playing the guitar, this would be called a power chord. And the reason for that is that the middle note is the one that gives it its sort of quality of sound. So either major or minor. Without that note, it's hard to tell. And so you're just left with kind of the pillar notes. And it sounds really strong and intense, which is exactly what you want for a superhero movie. You've also got really quick notes that provide a very strong rhythm. And a strong rhythm usually signifies kind of stability. As well as that, you've also got this ascending line in the chords as they change. Which is actually very, very similar to the James Bond theme tune, and because it moves up chromatically just means every note, you kind of get this rise in tension as it goes up. And then you've got the melody that comes in over this theme, and it just moves by step, which usually means that it's quite easy to follow, and it's not that shocking, it's just sort of around a G minor chord. So that's the entirety of the opening of the theme. The second part out of the 3 parts is more of a transitioning section, and it's just to change the key, and that is very important. When you change the key in a piece of music, it takes you to a sort of different landscape, somewhere slightly unfamiliar from where you started. So if you start in G minor, all of this now sounds very familiar. But then if I change to E minor, it sounds like a completely different world. And the second section does the job of getting us from G minor to E minor. And it does that with some interesting chords. So you get G minor, C minor, G minor, and then interestingly, you get an A flat major chord. And it's actually very clever because it lifts the music up. And it makes it sound like you're traveling to a completely different place. Like this. And then at the end of this entire section, you get a D major chord, which is actually not that unusual in G minor, but then it just lifts to E, and then down, and then you land back in E minor. So it doesn't sound that jarring, but it does keep you interested. You've sort of opened the door into this completely new landscape. And this is section 3, and the theme that most people know. So the chords for this section are E minor, C major, then you get A major with a C sharp in the bass, which is A major but with its middle note in the left hand, and then back to C major, and then D major, and then back to E minor. Now the interesting thing here is that chromatic movement, which is moving from one key to the next available key. So here you get C major, and you get C sharp in the left hand, which is just up from C, because of this A major chord. When you put the middle note from a chord in the bass, it weakens it because, as I said before, the middle note is the one that gives it its quality of sound. And if you put that in the left hand, it's not the root note of the chord. The root note of the chord would sound much stronger. But with the middle note of the chord, it sounds kind of weaker. And also, because it's the note that gives it its quality and it's a major chord, it really does lift you up when you get to that moment because the left hand is going up. And unlike the first section where the melody moves by step, The melody in this case overreaches by stretching far beyond the chord. And the reason it does that is so that it drops back down onto a note that is in the chord for that one with the weaker left hand. So E minor, C major, overreaches, and then lands to feel settled on that chord with a weaker bass. And then you get something called contramotion, where the melody is going down while the bass notes are going up, so they meet in the middle like this, to then start the phrase again. The other thing is, unlike before, there is this persistent sort of harmony underneath it all, which is this. Whichever chord you play, that stays throughout, which makes you feel confident and shows consistency. Now, obviously, when I play this on the piano, I can't do both things at once, so you just got to include it where you can. But in the actual thing, that does stay throughout. So these types of music aren't written by accident. Composers tend to use a lot of devices or things that we know sound a certain way in music. For example, taking the middle note out of a chord, knowing that that is the note that gives it its quality of sound, and taking it out just leaves you with the kind of the pillars of the chord. Or using these sorts of rhythms to create urgency. And then there's the chord structures that are used to create a sense of euphoria by lifting the music. And there is lots of music that is really intentionally written like that. For example, the Stranger Things theme, and in this video, I did a video about why that sounds so good. So if you're interested in that, head on through and I will see you there.